Well, welcome to this demonstration of the InterAcct import shipment costing system. What we're seeing here is a typical main menu for InterAcct. The menu options, of course, will change quite dramatically depending on what software modules you've elected to purchase. But in this particular demonstration, we're going to lead you through the whole process relating to import shipment costing. First, we're going to look at an overseas supplier, and then we'll create or look at an imported shipment product in the stock database and the calculation of the landed cost of that product. Next, we'll create a purchase order for an overseas supplier for that product, and then attach that purchase order to a shipment record. Once we've done that, we'll show you the process of adding actual costs via the Creditors Invoicing system, both for local and foreign currency invoices. And then we'll go through the actual process of landing those goods from the imported shipment into stock, and that will finalise this demonstration. It is only an overview. We're not going to go into too much detail, so sit back and I'll lead you through the process. Okay, step number one, the overseas suppliers. I'm going to go into accounts payable or creditors here, menu number 5. Here it comes up with the creditors menu, and menu number 1 is giving us access to the creditors database. So I'll select menu number 1. It automatically comes up with a search screen, so if we needed to search on them, we had lots and lots of records, we can do that. We've only got some test data here, so I'm just going to click Start Search. It brings up a very limited list. It's number 2, there's our overseas supplier, so I'll just click on 2, and that calls up the creditor record. Name, phone numbers, address, all sorts of things, and of course another lower menu with all sorts of other information on accounting information, etc. Look, it's basically the same record for a local supplier as for overseas, except that this flag here, is it local, which is set to O at the moment, is a little pop-up table, and I've just selected O for overseas supplier. And when I did that, it brought up an extra field over here being currency. I'll just click on that to bring that up, and that's where you can set up your different currencies and obviously come back in here and change those exchange rates regularly. We've also got the payment method, letter of credit in this case. Again, you can set up this table to suit yourself, but really that's all there is to setting up a credit, just a case of typing it in. At the next menu, if I just skip through some of these menus here, come down to here, number 20 is where you can set up all the different bases for bringing in goods from the supplier. So I'll just select number 20 there, menu, and here we've got free on board, and you can see free on board in relation to freight C. I'll call that record up, but it means simply that you can, in this record here, set up, you can bring in goods from this supplier by air or by sea and have different cost factors. In this example, it automatically displayed the cost factors for this one, for sea freight, FOB, and you can have as many of these cost factors to suit yourself. This one we've got half a dozen. Some are based on local currency, that's the L, some are based on foreign currency. The calculations, some are based on the FOB price, and some are based in this case on the cubic capacity, but it also could be weight, of course. There's no limits to the number of cost factors you've got, and these same cost factors are used when you create a import shipment product in the stock database. When we're estimating the landed cost, we're using these same factors, of course, for estimating of landed cost. Later, when we create a shipment record, an overseas shipment record, we're using the same factors yet again to estimate the landed cost. Actual cost coming through normally from creditors invoices. Again, we're breaking those costs down into these same factors so we can get variance analysis between estimated and actual. Alright, so as I say, it's all entirely up to you what cost factors you want. You can create new cost factors here, just in this little menu. And by the way, this button here where it says manual, that's where you can click on that button. It will call up automatically a Microsoft Word document, which is in effect a mini manual on the whole purchasing, importing system. You can look at it on the screen, or of course you can print it out. From here we can also link into this supplier stock item and to the various import shipment costing calculations. We won't do that at the moment. We'll come in via the stock system to do that. Alright, so I'll just go back one step, just use escape or go back here, and we're back to the supplier record. So that's all there is, step 1, setting up your supplier. Next we're going to actually create a stock item. I'll show you one that's already been created. So I'll just click on the home button up here, and it'll take me back to the main menu. Well, step number 2 is to go in and have a look at an imported stock item. As you can see on the menu, it's menu number 10 for the stock menu. So I'll just select that. And over here you can see on the stock menu you can also set up creditors from this point if you wish. But we're going to select menu number 2, which is the product groups and product items. I've only got one here for solar water heating equipment, so I'll just call that up. And at the next menu it says import product items. And I have put one in, here it is, so I'll just call this one up. And here is the product stock item. We've got an image showing of the item. It's actually the product from this Chinese company. I've actually selected, because it's an overseas product, it's brought up this field, what's the basis we bring it in. I've selected FOB, and I've put in the foreign currency, in this case US dollars, buy cost. And then at the next menu, you may see the menu import costing. That only applies obviously for that menu for imported items. So let's go in there, and this is where we're going to actually calculate the landed cost. It's an automatic process. All these fields that are shaded in green are non-data input fields. They're just copied for display purposes. The method we're bringing it in is sea freight, as you can see. And now we can view, it calculates the cost factors automatically. It applies the foreign currency exchange rate of 0.78 to the US dollar in this example. And it goes to those 6 cost items we set up for that supplier and applies the exchange rate and indeed that FOB buy price of 850 US and calculates out the landed cost, which you can see here totals 929. Now you can adjust those cost factors, of course, to suit yourself. Once you're happy with that landed cost in Australian dollars, and indeed it'll apply the markup of 50% on this item in the example to get to an expected sell price, you just click on this field that says update here, and what that does, it automatically posts back to the product item that landed cost, the latest cost. As you can see, $929. This is where it applies that same markup to get to a suggested sell. We've put in an actual list price here of $13.99, and the difference percentage has been calculated as 0.92%, which means that we're getting nearly 1% more in gross profit than the 50% would normally apply, and showing a profit margin of 33.54. Of course, down here under other selling prices, it's automatically calculated the 3 other price levels, being trade, wholesale and distributor, based on that list price. Also here and showing on the menu is the product description, which I've just cut and paste automatically from this Chinese company's website, a full-blown description of this product item. Anyway, that's all that's required as far as ready now to raise a purchase order on this product item. So I'll just click on the Go to Main Menu button, Home, and it'll take us back to the main menu. Well, the third step within this process is the raising of the purchase order. Now there's 2 options here for raising purchase orders within InterAcct. One is a sort of a semi-automatic one based on back orders from your sales orders area, and the other is where you can just go in and raise a purchase order manually. Of course, there are suggested reorder reports within the stock system which will indicate, depending on your min-max levels, when you should reorder, and you can view those both by stock item and also stock items by supplier. And that can be again the basis for creating an automatic purchase order. Look, in this example, what I've done is I've just gone into the sales menu and created a sales order. I'll just call that to show you what I've done. Here's the sales order, and under the line items that we've sold, I've got our stainless steel water heater here, and as you can see, I've ordered 2. We didn't have any available in stock at that time, so hence the back order was calculated automatically for 2, and it's showing that we needed to purchase 2. Now in the purchasing menu, what then happened is that the required to purchase file was automatically updated, and on that basis what we were able to do is to go in and automatically create purchase orders, which I did as well. Here's my little record for creating the purchase order. At the menu, it actually allows you to look at the required to purchase file, create the purchase order, and indeed you could view that purchase order as I did at the time, and I changed the order quantity. So the sales back order was for 2, as you might recall, a quantity of 2, but what I actually did was to add a further quantity there for stock as well. So when I went in, here's my purchase order, which was created automatically, and what I did, I went in and manually said, okay, here's our 2, that came through automatically. I added another quantity of 3 for stock, making it a grand total of 5 on purchase order. So it can be totally automatic if you want to raise purchase orders from the required to purchase file, but in this case I manually went in and edited and as you can see added a further 3 on order for stock. So as a result of that, I'll just go back to the home here, it's the quickest way. As a result of that activity, if we go and call up the stock item, go back into product groups, or we could go and search on the also known as or any of the product items, but look, we'll go through the normal ways we do. Call up the solar group and go into the stock item itself. Here it is again. And as you can see, we've got purchase orders here for 5. We've got sales orders and back orders for 2. And our net position once those purchase orders come in is that we will have 3 left in stock. As you can see, the menu has changed slightly. We've now got a view where we can go and see those back orders, and it will link us back into the sales order that we just looked at a moment ago. And we can also view the purchase order. Here's the purchase order, and of course that purchase order could have a quantity required for a job if you're using the job cost module. In this case we didn't. We had a sales order quantity for 2, we had 2 for stock, and a total of 5, as you can see. At the moment it's tracking where we're at in terms of what's in goods in transit, the GIT quantity, which at this stage is 0. We haven't got any actually in goods in transit yet, which is our next step, by the way. And of course we haven't landed any. So there's yet, as it says in this reconciliation, a yet 5 to come, and we've got the expected date here, of course, and a little cost indication. So as a full reconciliation, the same sort of thing, by the way, is available if you link. We'll go from the stock item to the supplier now. Just click on this little tab menu here. Here's our supplier again, and we can go and view purchase orders by supplier, which is here, as you can see. We can see the stock held by supplier, and again we can get a list of those stock items that we get from that supplier. At this stage we've still only got 1, and it's showing us the net balance situation. Alright, so that was all from just creating a purchase order. Just all these things are updated automatically. I'll go back to home again. Now the next step, now that we've created a purchase order, well, we've created a supplier, created a product item, done a costing on that product item, created a purchase order which is showing both the Australian dollar landed cost estimate and the foreign currency one. Fourth step is to create a shipment record. When the supplier notifies us that those goods are on the water, coming out on their way, then we're in a position to go and create a shipment record, which we're going to do through the import costing menu. Okay, so we'll select the import costing menu, and this is the menu where you can go to sort of getting started, if you like. It's where you set up your foreign currency purchase order clauses that would appear on your purchase order, of course, which is number 2. Those bases for shipment, which is FOB and CIF. And indeed those shipment cost factors. This is where you can set sort of a getting started area, if you like. But also you can see here where we can go and access that supplier database, except in this case it only shows you your overseas suppliers. It filters out all the local suppliers, and here we are back at the Chinese supplier. Also the stock button here only shows you those stock items. There is a search facility, so you can search by supplier if you need to. It only shows you the imported product items here, not the full product list of local items. This is where we can go and, of course, view our purchase orders, and we can just go straight to our purchase order register and of course, view our purchase order, which is sitting there. But this is where also we actually create the shipment record. Now I've just created one, and I'll show you what I've done. So here's a shipment record, and I'll just call it up. Once again, a lot of fields are automatic here, and you can see I've actually got some values already. So I select the supplier, I give it a voyage number, of course, this record, nominate the exchange rate that we want to use for this shipment. We put in some various dates here of when we expect the ship to depart and when we expect it to arrive, and the shipping line and freight forwarder involved, which was little databases there. And once you've actually created this record, it will automatically take you to menu 1, which is where you can define what containers are on that ship, and you can attach the purchase orders. So one shipment might actually relate to several different shipping containers, and on each shipping container you can actually nominate what purchase orders and indeed what purchase order line items are included in that container. So you could have one shipment could be a mixture of different purchase orders and indeed you may not necessarily, so if we ordered 5 of these water heaters, solar water heaters, we could say that on the ship there's actually only 4 of them and there's 1 still outstanding, so you don't actually have to have the full quantity as it was on your purchase order. So what we did, we created a container record, and then we attached to that container what purchase orders, in this case purchase order 4001, and then we selected the line item. And what then happened is that the system automatically ran this calculate cost menu and calculated the landed cost. Now this is landed cost broken up once again, as I mentioned before, in terms of those shipment cost factors. You can see the total in Australian dollars landed cost is estimated to be 4648. If we wanted to check that figure, of course, we can go to the stock item, back to, this is just linking into the stock item file, and you can see here that the buy cost for 1 is $929, and of course our purchase order, I'll just go back a step now, our purchase order was for a quantity of 5, which is made up of a sales back order for 2, and of course a stock quantity for 2. Now what we can do is that we can link now back to the sales order, the original sales order, and we'll see on the sales order that yes, we've got some purchase orders and those line items. Here's that line item there, and if we just go into that original required to purchase file, we can see that yes, we required it to buy 2. We actually then ordered 2. This is a complete reconciliation, if you like. Now we've got goods in transit 5, which is showing, of course, the total quantity in this instance, and of course we've updated with the shipment number and when the date's going to come in. As far as, if I just call that record up here, it's got the shipment due date, the 21st of March. So that required to purchase record has been updated. If I link to the supplier once again and look at that supplier's purchase orders, again that file's been updated automatically to say when that's due, and the shipment number has already been attached to that purchase order. This shipment register by supplier has been updated as well. So all these inquiry files are updated, and indeed if we go and link into the stock item itself, again we can look at stock by supplier and use that as an entry basis for here's the stock item once again. We've now, if we have a look at purchase orders where we were a moment ago, for this particular stock item, we can see that yes, we've got a purchase order for 5, but now that field that was 0 a moment ago is now showing goods in transit is 5, and we haven't landed in there yet, so there's still 5 to come, and of course it's updated with the shipment number and so on. So with a fully integrated system, again we can go into complete loops. We can link back into the shipment record again if we really wanted to, just from the stock item. So we've gone around a couple of loops. Whilst we're in the stock item file, one of the interesting things that we can do, here's the suggested reorder file, by the way, which I filled in earlier on, just giving min-max quantities and when to order, and it says order now. The thing that we've got here is a stock movements file. Now this is tracking that sales order. You might remember the sales order was for 2. We needed to purchase 2. This is jobs, which may not apply to you. We can remove that column if it doesn't apply. We needed to purchase 2, we've then ordered 2, we've now got goods in transit 2. So again, once again, it's giving you a full tracking reconciliation, this case in the stock area, as we saw before in the sales order, and we can see also against the supplier. Okay, so I'll just go back to the main menu. So all we've done so far is to create that shipment record. I'll just go back into it again, call it up. We created the shipment record. We nominated the container number, then we said in that container what purchase orders were related to it and what purchase order line items. The system, as you might recall, estimated the landed cost automatically, and here's a total for this whole shipment, both in foreign currency and local currency. It also updated, I haven't shown you this yet, but let's do that, the estimated cost. Once again, this is for the whole shipment, not just for one line item, one purchase order item, but the whole shipment. And as you can see, we've got here the estimated cost in Australian dollars broken down by those the same 6 cost factors that we've been using. The actual costs at this stage are all 0, blank, and so hence the estimate variance is not applicable at this stage. So the next stage, now that we've created our shipment record, we've attached the purchase orders to that shipment, it's estimated what the landed cost should be. The next step will be to put in some actual cost transactions via Creditors Invoices, and we'll be able to see then estimated versus actual and of course a variance. Okay, so now we're going to get into the accounting side of our import shipment costing, and we're going to put in some creditor invoices in relation to that shipment costs in other words. Now we can do it under the accounts payable menu number 5, or indeed we can also put in creditor invoices under import shipment costing. So let's do that, number 11. As you can see, there's a little button here saying creditors invoices. So I've actually entered some invoices, so let's have a look at those. We won't bother searching. I've got 5 in here so far. I'll call up the last one. Now this one was dated 4th of March, and it was a foreign currency invoice from the actual supplier, which is, if you like, the FOB, paying for the goods. There is no GST on that because they won't charge us Australian GST. The Australian GST will be charged to you from the customs clearance agent typically. So this one's got no GST in it, and we've allocated this invoice against goods in transit, and of course it's against our shipment here. There's a little lookup table there so you didn't have to remember your shipment. It looked up shipments by supplier, and it also said what was the cost item. Again, it looked up a little table of cost items against that shipment, and of course we allocated FOB. Then we put in the foreign currency amount. It used the exchange rate of 0.78 to calculate the Australian dollar amount, and that would have been posted against the shipment. So I'll just go into here into the shipment costs. Here's all the shipment costs, and you can see FOB, we had an estimate of 4166 and the actual is the same and no variance. We can go back into the actual shipment itself. A couple of more menus have been added, so we can see a transaction ledger against the shipment, and that'll show all those transactions that have come against that shipment so far. If we call one of those transactions up, we can link into the source transaction, being in this case the creditor's invoice. So there's this full integration once again between the shipment and the creditor's invoice and vice versa. Okay, so there was a foreign currency invoice. It's approved for payment, as you can see, and it's got the expected payment date updating the cash flow analysis within InterAcct. If I go back and call up the next invoice, which is the customs clearance one, this is a bit more interesting, this invoice, $717, but look at the amount of the GST content, $490. So it's not 10% of that amount. In other words, we're paying the customs clearance agent, it's just saying is this date correct because I've got some advanced dates here. We're paying them the GST on the whole shipment. So when we go into the lower menu here, we've got some local shipment costs for the actual clearance charges themselves, $250 less than 10% for GST, so net 227. That's again being posted against the shipment. And if we have a look under expense allocation, I've allocated to purchases the amount of the GST being $467. And so what that has the effect of doing is to say, yes, we owe them the GST as a creditor, but we're going to claim that back from the government as a GST debit. This little tab menu here, GL Post, allows us to see the actual postings that will go through to the general ledger. As you can see, there's 2 entries for GST, one in respect of the clearance agent, and secondly, the second line down, one in respect of GST on the shipment itself. And then of course we've got goods in transit as a debit, as an asset, current asset, and creditors being the total of 717. Purchases, actually just 0, because there wasn't actually no purchases on that one. Okay, so that was that rather unusual customs clearance agent. A couple of more standard ones here. Here's the overseas freight. Once again, it's a foreign currency invoice, no GST, allocated to goods in transit. Here's the Australian dollar equivalent of that foreign currency amount, no GST being shown, again posted to the shipment. Aussie Freight Forwarders is the local freight, so it's a local invoice, $8, $55 for the freight, $5 GST, and of course allocated to the shipment. If they were charging us some other freight for general freight, if you like, not relating to the shipment, we could allocate that to expenses straight away. Lastly, a bit of duty, local currency invoice, we're paying the duty here. We've got some GST content, and it's actually we shouldn't have GST because we've already paid the GST on that, so I should just zero that out. and paid the GST, sorry, paid the duty, and it's just gone against the shipment once again under the cost item of duty. The GST, there is GST on duty. I know it's double taxation, but that would have been taken up with that other previous entry, the 490. Okay, so let's go back to our shipment now. Calling up the shipment, and as I say, that's now our estimated versus actual cost in summary, summarised by cost item. You can see the estimated cost and the actual. Quite a big variance between the sea freight estimated at $2.50, and of course it came in at $500. This is only one item on one whole container because it's a bit silly, I suppose. But if your cost factors were completely wrong at the end of the shipment, of course you would need to go back and change your factors and recalculate the estimated landed cost the next time. The transactions I showed you before is a little transaction ledger. Next step is really to define the landed date and then bring those goods into stock. So that's our next step. So what we're going to do now is go back into our shipment and actually land the shipment. So I'm going to select import costing once again, go into our shipments, call up that shipment, just press enter to call it up, and menu number 2 there is to import the actual landed date. As you can see, the landed date field up here is currently blank, and we click on that and it takes us to that field, and let's just say for argument's sake it landed on the 23rd, and I don't have to say March or 2010, it's going to default to that automatically. And then now is a help message that says now enter the landed cost based on actual or estimate. So it's a little reminder message, if you like, that comes up there. And so what we're going to do is, it's telling us there's some goods in transit, but let's just, I might say that's now landed, now status. It's also into the landed cost because you can see the landed cost is currently 0 at this stage. So let's just go in here and nominate the landed cost. Now, when we're going to fill in this column here. When you nominate the landed cost, you would take the best figure. So in this case, we've got clearance. We estimated 83, but the actual was 227.73. So we're not likely to get another cost come in. So let's say that the landed cost is based on the actual. In this case, duty was exactly the same. Finance, we had $187. We've had no actual come in so far, so we may use the same figure if you like. That may well be sort of a journal entry that we can put in later. FOB, exactly the same estimated and actual, so we'll just use the same figure again. So this is our nominated landed cost that we're keying in here. So this is the figure that eventually this shipment will land into stock at. And of course it could be more than just one item. In this example I've only got 5 solid water heaters. It could be several items, of course. Inland freight, again quite a big variance between 65 cents and the actual cost, so I'm going to use the best of those two, which is the $50. And sea freight, we know that figure now, so unfortunately we'll have to use that higher figure. So now you'll see that we're landing these goods at $539,151 as opposed to the actual cost, as opposed to the estimated cost. So that's going to be our landed cost. We haven't landed anything just yet, so what we're going to do is next land the shipment, and if you can see landed shipment is here. We've got the actual landed cost here. We'll go into landed shipment, and it's going to here it just says view products not landed. Well, here's our one product. It hasn't landed yet. It's a little flag there that says has it landed, and of course it's blank at this stage. So it says step 1, view all the products on the shipment. Well, that's all the product. There's only one in this example, if you like. Step 2, enter the container landed dates. So we can come in here and put in the dates in which this container was actually landed, and these, in this case, we've got the size and all sorts of things. So we can put up here container landed date, and let's just say it was landed on the 23rd, and there's the container landed now, and I'll say allocate back to back orders. So we're actually saying we're ready to go now, and confirm landed lines now, and it's just view landed lines, attach purchase order. So let's just go in here and say yes, we're ready to go. So land shipment now, I'll say yes. That's now calculated. Let's go and have a look at our stock item. And what's changed immediately now is that we've now got an in quantity of 5, and so that's our buy-ins. Our stock balance is 5. We've reserved 2. In other words, that sales order which you haven't shipped out, which was a back order, is now been transferred from a back order to be stock in reserve. So we're saying what's net available, and you can see what was on purchase order 5 is now back to 0. We've got net available 3 because we've got 5 in stock, less 2 that we reserved for that sales order, giving a net quantity of 3. If we go into our stock movements and track what's happened, you can see that we had goods in transit, we've received 5, we've reserved 2, we haven't shipped them out yet. In other words, we haven't dispatched that sales order, so we're yet to ship 2. So again, it's tracking that sales order, goods have come in, everything looking good. Of course, we can go back and view the purchase order, and it will show that the goods have landed as well. We can check on purchase orders by supplier or by item. So that's really all that's required. You can do it automatically. You don't have to say put in the container landed date. You could just do it and say yes, the goods have landed, and just do an automatic update. But that was a manual way. If you had serial numbers, you'd be attaching the serial numbers. It would beep at you and say please attach serial numbers to the landed goods to update those records. But the goods have now come in. If we come back to the estimated versus landed situation again, we can see that the landed cost has been updated, and we've now got this variance between the actual and landed of $187. In other words, we've taken up some finance costs that really haven't come through yet. But what's gone through to stock is $5,300 in our stock file. Well, we're back at the InterAcct main menu here, and this is something of a summary, if you like, of what we've done. During this demonstration, you'll recall that we went in first and created an overseas supply under the creditors or accounts payable menu. Then we came through to the stock system and created a stock item and estimated what the landed cost might be of that item. The next step, actually, we went to the sales menu and created a sales order, which was actually a back order, and that updated the required to purchase file, which we used as a platform to automatically create the purchase order. We went to that purchase order and added some extra stock for extra quantity for stock, and then we raised the purchase order, which in turn was linked to a shipment and a container on that shipment. We estimated the cost of that shipment automatically. We then posted some accounting transactions to that shipment, both foreign and local currency transactions, and some rather interesting things there in regard to GST. At the point when we were ready to land the goods, we estimated the landed cost, of course, after seeing the estimated and actual costs, and that's the point where we're now at. So if we go back to the import shipment costing and indeed call up our shipment and just have a final look at that, what's happening. There was a small variance there between the actual and landed. That's the finance charges, you might recall. So it's quite normal when you're landing a shipment that all the actual costs, the point when the goods arrive at your warehouse, may not have come through yet. You can estimate a sort of a best cost thing as we did. Eventually those costs will come in to you via Creditors Invoices or whatever, and you can then account for a shipment variance between the landed cost and the true actual cost. It should only be a very minor figure, of course, and you can put a journal off to purchase price variance for that amount. And that final step, that final variance journal entry, which is normal, what would normally happen, is all you need to do, and the shipment costs are there. You may need to go back to those shipment cost factors that we set it right at the start, and based on our superior knowledge after actually importing the shipment, we could have basically adjust those shipment factors for next time, so we actually reduce the incidence of any variances. Along the way, all the inquiries are updated, the inquiries of what was on back order, what's on purchase order, the sales order in terms of now is ready to be dispatched, and the whole thing is integrated. We try to simplify and automate every possible process to reduce errors and reduce the administration time along the way. Hopefully you've seen also how easy it is to move around the InterAcct system. Although import shipment costing is one of the more complicated things that you can do in accounting, We've hoped that we've fine-tuned the system now that to make it as simple as we possibly can.